everyone, and a huge welcome to everybody logged into the conference. We've had such a lot to think about so far already today if you've had a chance to join in the other sessions. And in this session, we have a fantastic team of panellists from all across the 4 nations. So we're going to have quite a difficult job actually packing everything in, but we are really looking forward to it. We're going to be focusing on the successes in music education, and we have a lot to celebrate as we slowly begin to make and share music together again after such a long time in isolation or challenging circumstances. The challenging circumstances remain, but many music teachers have shown remarkable resilience and creativity and have been working extremely hard to ensure that music making can continue. And we have got so much to learn from sharing and collaborating, and we hope that this session can contribute to that in a small way. I'd like to invite you to add your questions and comments on this chat via Slido, and I will pick these up and ask our panellists to comment and discuss these later on in the session. So this really is a chance to discuss and share ideas. What is happening in teaching and learning, and what can we learn from one another? And I'll introduce our panellists just in a moment. So my name is Pauline Black, and I'm the Head of Music and a Senior Lecturer in Music Education at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. And I also spend 1 day per week working on freelance education and community music projects. I spent over 20 years working in a local authority secondary school before moving to work at university. And I'm also undertaking a part-time PhD looking at the learning and teaching of jazz and improvising. Before I hand over to the panellists, I just thought I'd share a couple of really short quotes from a piece of work that I did just a couple of weeks ago in a school, and I thought it'd be really nice to get words from some young people in this. We did a project with young people, and this was feedback from a young child. I liked it all, especially having hearing instruments up close. I could feel the music in my heart. I was inspired by James, and I play my guitar much more than I used to. I liked it best when they played from my score. That was really cool. And this was a comment from the teacher. For me, the outstanding moment of the visit was when a child who had elective mutism had the confidence to put her hand up and ask a question. That's the first time she had spoken since starting at the school. She has spoken in a few of her classes this week. Her parents are amazed. The power of music, fantastic. So we're talking about successes in music education, and I just wanted to start with something really positive. And I'm going to hand over to these amazing panellists who've all got amazing stories and amazing things to share. And I'd like to hand over, first of all, to Fiona to introduce herself.
Hello everybody, my name's Fiona Gormley. I am Head of Music in Cookstown High School in County Tyrone in Northern Ireland. I've been Head of Music in Cookstown since 2002, and I was Head of Music in 2 previous schools just before that. So I've been teaching for a long time, and this is my 29th year now in the classroom, so apparently I should by now know what I'm doing. The pandemic really did cause us all to have to be much more resilient, and I'm really glad that Pauline has mentioned the resilience of music teachers. And I'll be sharing later on just about the perspective of music education in particular in Northern Ireland as we go through this session with you. Outside of school, I accompany a male voice choir in Belfast. The Queen's Island Victoria will be getting a shout out now, they'll be delighted to have. I also play violin in New Irish Arts Orchestra. And so we have a couple of nights coming up in the Waterfront Hall in Belfast, and I cannot wait. So thank you so much for being part of today, and hopefully you'll hear lots of things that will inspire you, challenge you, and maybe just make you feel aligned to some of the woes that are going on around the country.
Lovely, thank you, Fiona. And can we now go to Rian, please?
Sure, thanks, Pauline. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rian Hutchings. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Anthem. Anthem's a new charity started up in Wales. We are looking to create a Wales in which music can empower every young life. We are an overarching organisation across the whole of Wales. So we're aiming to be a funder, but also looking at being a strategic organisation who can look at gaps and look at how we can build partnerships to build up the sector in Wales. My background is as a music practitioner for organisations, as an artist. So I have worked for a number of different organisations over my career. I led the education team at Welsh National Opera for a number of years. And previous to Anthem, I've been running a charity in Newport called Opera Sonic, making opera in the community and in schools. So really excited to be part of this conversation this afternoon.
Thank you. We're all really excited to be part of this conversation, which is brilliant. And I'm going to hand over to our next fabulous panellist, Rhiannon, please.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. And it's quite encouraging that we're all talking about positive initiatives in music education. We live and breathe the negatives, and I think it's fantastic that we're concentrating on the positives moving forward after a very, very difficult period. As far as Wales is concerned, as a devolved nation with responsibility for education amongst some of its functionalities, there are many different initiatives that are occurring. Those green shoots are coming through. And I think one of the difficulties that we can perhaps, and challenges that we can discuss in perhaps in some of the questions in the chat, is how we move those challenges forward in terms of having many different positive initiatives and how we can combine them. And one of the big calls for me as a former music teacher and now as a member of the Senedd, the Welsh Parliament, will be how we come together in that call for a national plan with a cohesive strategy for music education, which includes that collaboration of all the different myriad organisations, Anthem being a fantastic part of that moving forward. I welcome that, and I also welcome the discussion around the exciting new curriculum in Wales. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to the panel. And my Scottish colleagues are up next, and the next one on our list is Kate Picken. Welcome.
Oh, welcome. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I'm a music teacher, and I've been teaching in schools for quite a number of years. I was in secondary before I had a family, and then I've been involved in teaching in primary schools now for about 35 years, and love my job. And I've been fortunate to be in part of experiencing lots of different primary schools, small and larger, and been able to really enjoy doing this. I've also been a Creative Music Scotland Youth Music Initiative officer, facilitating and managing courses in Dumfries and Galloway, putting them out into schools. So that's been really good to see what teachers are looking for, what head teachers are looking for, and putting that together for them. I've been on the Expressive Arts National Working Group for Education Scotland, and looking at the progression within the music curriculum, which is really interests me a lot, and what are the steps you need within your curriculum to take things forward. So that's been really, really interesting. I've always been interested in developing resources for teachers to help them gain confidence with their teaching in the classroom, and something I'm still doing and developing and sharing with teachers. And outside teaching, I run and the musical director of the Farmers Choir. It's a national one, and really enjoyed bringing people together who are not confident, and not confident, they enjoy singing, but it's just a wonderful thing to be involved with. And I've also started group keyboard lessons after school for children to learn how to play the piano in group sessions, which has been really interesting. So I'm delighted to be here and look forward to this event. Thank you.
Fantastic, thanks Kate. And last but by no means least, my colleague John Wallace. And I have to say this is a hugely esteemed panel all round, but very huge congratulations to John, who has very recently been awarded the Queen's Medal for Music. So congratulations for everyone, John. And if you'd like to briefly introduce yourself, thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. Well, I've got the best job in Scotland because I chair the Music Education Partnership Group.
Okay.
And that's it. That's all I do.
There's a lot more for music education, and I'm sure more will come out through the meeting. But yes, a fantastic advocate for music education, and lots more as we will come out. So I think without further ado, we're going to get on with the questions and start unpacking some of these issues. And John will actually be talking first off in our question. So, huge question, and we're going to try and encapsulate this as briefly as we can. But this is about sharing experience across the four nations, because there are lots and lots of similarities in music education, but there are also lots of nuances and subtle differences. So what is the current state of play in music education in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland? Please provide a brief overview, and I'm going to put that one to John first. How briefly can you give us an overview of music education?
Okay, I'll try and be as quick as I can, Pauline. And Despite the pandemic, or perhaps because of the pandemic, we're in a better place in Scotland looking forward than we've been for very many years. Now, the curriculum for excellence, which I think Wales is having a good go at the moment as well, it has music as part of the expressive arts as a core subject. So I can't think actually of a secondary school without a flourishing music department. We have a few more problems, I think, in the primary area, because we're down to about 46 specialist primary music teachers across the whole of Scotland now. But in addition to in school, we've got 32 music services around in every local authority that largely deal with instrumental tuition in secondary schools. And they were reaching about 60,000 kids, or about 8–9% of the whole school population before the pandemic. And so the 60,000 were taking lessons through the instrumental music services. We also have the Youth Music Initiative, which from 2003 has been started up then, and it's expanded to, just before the pandemic, it was reaching about 250,000 children and young people per year, giving them a first opportunity. Well, when you think the school roll across the whole lot is about 700,000, that's a lot of kids being reached. And so the YMI has largely filled the gap of this profound lack of specialist teachers in primary. And we're also finding, MEPIG has commissioned some research from Leo Mostardini on teacher confidence and initial teacher training. And we're finding that, only about 3% of primary school teachers feel that they've got an effective structure in Scotland for teaching music in primary schools, and that's very, very few teachers. So, so that's something that we really look to be working on in future. And we'll talk about this later, but we had a very good result at the election. We've been working on the politicians for years. Luckily, most of them played instruments in the youth, the ones that we've talked to. And so in the last Holyrood elections, it was in all the political parties' manifestos, and we managed to get free instrumental tuition, GTCS registration for instrumental teachers, and also the undertaking to pilot We Make Music schools, which would put primary schools into clusters where we put music at the core of the curriculum. Problems to sort out in the future: teacher confidence. Also, curriculum for excellence is quite mature. Education Scotland and SQA admit that they haven't been able to deliver it really properly, so we're looking to Wales to do that. And so SQA and the curriculum for excellence are being reformed at the moment, and we all got in sort of stuff to Education Scotland, to the big survey that they're doing yesterday. So that's up for grabs. So it's a very dynamic situation in Scotland.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, tons and tons of stuff in there. And I'm going to hand over to Rhiannon in a minute to hear the Welsh perspective. I'm sure there may be common themes, so I'm not going to say any more at the moment. And I'll pull some of those out and we'll expand on some more of them in a little while. But Rhiannon, would you like to add anything on the Welsh perspective?
Thank you. Just very interesting to hear from David in regard to the dynamism that there is in Scotland. And obviously, or not obviously, that's why we're all here, there are lots of initiatives that are occurring in Wales at this moment in time. The last time I had an opportunity to speak to a conference in this vein, I just launched the report Land of Song, and we were discussing the desperate need with the cutbacks in local government around non-statutory services. We were looking at a landscape of demise of music support and instrumental peripatetic tuition in schools. So things have shifted now in regard to, there's a recognition in government that we have to provide that access to music education. There is still debate and conversation as to exactly the shape and form of that, but there is in development now the National Music Service for Wales, and within that will be collaboration with the new curriculum, the Donaldson curriculum, in areas of the expressive arts. And within those 5 areas, I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions around that and its implementation later in this session. But we also have now a Deputy Minister for Culture and Sport, which is very important, a single point of contact, and we have a refreshed TKs for our instrumental elite organisations, whether it's the National Youth Orchestra of Wales or our brass bands, theatres, etc. And obviously that linkage is going to be so important to what the shape of this National Music Service is going to be, what type of animal is it going to be, and how is that funded? And these are key questions, because obviously in Scotland's case, your 55 million is important in regards to the delivery of that. And there are some common themes in regard to confidence of teaching staff. There are common themes in terms of professional development for primary school teachers of music specialism. But all in all, I would say that there is much support within government for accessible musical pathways and the well-being of class or whole class music. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's really it's really warming to hear that there's much support within government, which is really nice to hear. And let's go to Northern Ireland and hear from Fiona to see if you can summarise the picture there.
Well, I'm envious because the situation in Northern Ireland is definitely behind where Scotland and Wales seem to be at. We have had huge reduction in the numbers of pupils who are accessing music on a regular basis in primary schools, and a drop in numbers picking it up at GCSE and A level. It has happened as it's been on a trend from before the pandemic, but the pandemic has really highlighted that there are faults in the system. Within the school I teach in, which is the perspective that I will share, I am aware of how other schools have managed the situation of music within their schools, but really my day-to-day is the closest that I have really to be able to share with you. It has, being in the pandemic affected us in that music suddenly stopped, and we were really limited as to how we were able to deliver music teaching. GCSE remained within the music department, and we managed to get those kids through, and it was brilliant. But Key Stage 3 teaching became really restricted in what we could do, and there was very little creative work we could do. We were teaching in a whole range of other types of classrooms. When we went into remote learning, it became even more frustrating, because the way that you want to teach music, which is creative and imaginative and composition and performance orientated, suddenly became nigh on impossible, and that has been very difficult to recover from. We're back now teaching in classrooms again, and I'm back in my music department, and this is great. But I'm having to pick up the pace quite a lot. It's great with new pupils who are full of enthusiasm, but one of the areas I've most noticed where we are still lacking that commitment from pupils is in instrumental tuition and attending lessons, or even wanting to take up lessons, and also in extracurricular activities. Pupils who maybe had instrumental tuition at primary school are not feeding up in the same numbers to post-primary that I would have seen in the past. And I think because instrumental tuition through the music services, we have 5 music services through the education authorities in Northern Ireland, and they try to maintain contact through Google Classroom tuition, and that worked for some, but it didn't work for all, and there was a considerable drop off of pupils. And so we're seeing that now as a negative drop off for us in post-primary as well. I'm seeing with my senior pupils, there's a reticence about becoming committed to something in addition to having to study for A-levels, because those pupils who are doing A-levels this year have never actually yet sat an external exam that has been assessed by an examiner. They have had teacher test grades and they've had predicted grades, and they're very nervous about what this year is going to look like. And so committing to coming to choir, committing to coming to band, committing to coming to orchestra is nearly something that is too much for them. Their mental well-being has really suffered. And yet the irony is that we are also aware of these studies that say that music is important for everybody's well-being, and as a subject in school, it has so many possibilities for enhancing the well-being of all, and everybody who participates in music at any level will always say that. And I feel like it has just had a great big bung put on top of it, and trying to lift that lid is really, really difficult at the minute. We're constantly up against the STEM agenda as well in school. The STEM agenda has been very successful and it's been great for promoting all of those other subjects, but I would love to see STEAM actually being much more promoted in Northern Ireland and get the arts back in there. The school I teach in, I have music for 1 period a week with my junior classes, so that's 50 minutes a week. And it's not equitable with art. And so art actually has more teaching time. And so I'm in that same strand in the mindset of the pupils as things like careers and citizenship and learning for life and work. And so their perspective on it is that I'm trying to make it into a subject they don't regard it as. It's not, in their opinion, a full academic subject, therefore not valid at GCSE, no matter how hard I push it. So I have thoughts and ideas, which I'll certainly share with you later on in this session, about how I think that could be turned around. But it's going to take a great big push, and it's going to take a lot of money to invest as well. It's great to see that the money is there. Scotland and Wales are availing of that. We need to find some of that now for Northern Ireland too.
Brilliant, thank you. And although you're saying that's there in Wales and Scotland, I can resonate with many of the things that you've said there. Through discussions with lots of my colleagues in Scottish classrooms, there's an awful lot of parallels with what you've said, which are actually things which are still happening in Scottish classrooms, and I'm sure they're happening in Welsh classrooms and English classrooms. It's fact, we need to build up children's confidence again, and many of these things, it's about convincing senior leadership teams of the value of music education. So many things are still happening in every classroom. But we're going to move on to the next question, and a lot of things will lead really nicely onto this next question. But this next question, we're going to discuss the balance or the interface between classroom music education and instrumental tuition. And are there any challenges which need to be tackled to get this balance right? How can they complement each other, and how can we work together? Do they work together well already? What can we learn from this? And Rian, we've not heard from you yet. Do you want to talk on that one first, or share your experiences?
Sure, Pauline, yes. And I mean, I think following on very well from what Fiona was saying, that really, I mean, I think Fiona, I absolutely agree with everything you were saying there, and we are seeing that in Welsh classrooms, as in Welsh high schools as well. The challenge of how you introduce music in a primary school, and the amount, the confidence of those teachers in the primary school to be able to deliver music varies wildly, I think, depending on different teachers' experiences. And so, then if you are in a primary school, and, I work in Newport a lot in schools, and there's one school that is fantastic for the arts and really embraces music, and they have music daily in assemblies. They have music, at different points in the day to change round from classrooms and things like that. They really embrace it. But, how a young person who would have an experience in that school and really understand the power of music can then make a transition to a high school where perhaps they get lost, or they don't have as many sessions in music, or music isn't as valued, and then suddenly we lose them. And that's the concern, I think. In Wales, obviously, as Rhiannon has touched on, we're working on a national plan for a national music service. We haven't had music hubs in Wales, so we have music services, and again, depending on local authority funding, there's been a big struggle in Wales around getting money into the system to support lessons for young people. It's fantastic that we now have this commitment from government to build a national plan. But again, you know, the conversations around that are looking at how can we deliver something really inspirational in primary school that inspires young people to think about music as something they can go on to. But I still think there is conversations to be had around then what does the delivery look like for individual music lessons, because that's the step that we want young people to take. We want them to be inspired to think about music, and then we want them to think about, well, maybe I could take up the violin, or maybe I could take up the electric guitar, or maybe I could drum, or maybe I could take up the oboe. But then how do we look at that progression and pick out talent? And you know, there's a lot of challenges, I think, in terms of building a system where we really feel like we're doing the best that we can for young people. And I mean, also then the conversations that we're having at Anthem with, we've got a youth forum that meets at the moment of 18 to 25-year-olds, and we've been talking to them about their experience of coming through the school system and what worked for them and what didn't. And you know, it's clear that depending on which school you were in depends on what your experience was, and that some young people just don't see themselves in the music classroom. So they're not seeing their experience there. You know, if they're from a Black or minoritized ethnic background, then and the teaching staff doesn't reflect that, then they don't see themselves. They don't see role models for themselves in the classroom. And there are obviously routes within the community that they get picked up through, that there might be a fantastic community organization that they're working with, but how heartbreaking that they can't see themselves in the music classroom, and that we're not picking up that talent through the school system. So I think there's challenges there about inclusion. There's challenges there about the workload that teachers have, and so we're asking them to go above and beyond just delivering the curriculum. And that, you know, already we know teachers are so stretched, and certainly in Wales, you know, I know there's a lot of moving into this new curriculum. There's a lot of concern about what those changes will mean for the school, and how actually are they going to deliver the expressive arts across the 5 strands, and actually, you know, meet the kind of 4 purposes of our new curriculum. A lot of anxiety out there, I think, around how that's going to work. So then to be able to say, on top of that, we want you to really push the music agenda beyond what just is in the curriculum. I think that's a big challenge.
Thank you. And a really key thing that you mentioned in there was young people not recognising themselves and their music within the curriculum, whether that be classroom or instrumental music. So thinking about that is a really powerful thing, no matter which sector we teach in. Fiona, would you like to make a comment on the role of instrumental music or classroom music and how they interface, and how that's impacting on you in your situation?
Well, when I thought about this question, Pauline, one of the things I thought about was the pupils who select to do GCSE and then further on into AS and A2 music tend to be those who are already having instrumental tuition outside of the classroom. And that has kind of brought them to a level where they can step into GCSE. And then I thought about what I do in the classroom, and really what I'm supposed to be doing is making sure that every child who I have in my classroom would be equipped to choose that as a GCSE subject. And the problem is that that is nearly an impossible thing to do. If you had somebody who was choosing to do GCSE history, they'd be able to build on their success and the scope of the subject that they'd studied so far. And that would be the case for any other academic subject in school. And then we look at Key Stage 3, even primary music. And primary music is nothing at all to do with my remit, so I'm not even going to talk about that because I don't want to end up down a rabbit hole. But Key Stage 3 music, it has a limited timetable allocation. It's not on a par with the other academic subjects. Therefore, we can't go deep into it. We can't actually give the pupils who are in front of us the depth of knowledge and experience and the sense of their own personal creativity and imagination coming to life to allow them to feel like musicians when they're in the classroom. Now, we get to do that to a certain level, and we certainly have embraced the opportunities and the challenges that have come from coming out of the pandemic. And this year it's been brilliant to see young people becoming creative and imaginative again. But I want to have them more. I want to have them more regularly, and that's going to take an investment. It's going to take an investment both financially, but also in personnel. We're going to need more staff, but that would also allow us to have a wider range of extracurricular activities, which would then blend in well with the instrumental programme as well. At the minute, the support that has been given to us as classroom teachers from the Education Authority really focused on the music service tuition package. Whenever we received a document in April, just last year, or earlier this year rather, called Music Unlocked, which was guidance for music teachers for how music was going to be unlocked following the lockdown of term 2. And most of the scope of that document focused on how classroom management was to be, still quite restricted, because we were still going to be, under the same restrictions as the rest of the school. And most of the document really looked at how tuition would move forward and how we would then have to have, we would follow the risk assessments and so on. We got quite excited that we were going to be allowed to do things, and literally within a week we were told that singing, woodwind and brass tuition would be banned. We wouldn't be allowed to have any singing in school, and that we had hoped that this was going to be an unlocking of music, and in actual fact it really wasn't. That didn't really help and support us, and that's the other area that we need, is help and support. We have an enthusiastic range of music teachers in primary and post-primary right across the whole of Northern Ireland who are mad keen about their subject and are devoted to sharing their subject with their children, but we just are limited in the amount of time that we have, in the class sizes that we have, in the facilities that some of us have. And yet, well, there's some schools who they have brilliant music departments with everything, and then there are some who are really struggling. There's quite a hierarchy as well in what's available across the province, but depending on area, demographic, type of school, it's such an unlevel playing field. So there's lots of things here, but as far as the connection between classroom and instrumental tuition is concerned, that was the thing that really struck me most, was just how we are dependent on the instrumental tuition for the longevity of our subject through the child's learning process, right through to A-level. And we could do more with that through classroom teaching, had we the time, the resources and the support. So I hope that does answer the question.
Thank you. That was beautifully summed up. I'm going to just put out a plea to the panel, because I feel we're going to be here for about 6 or 7 hours discussing these questions. But in the interests of moving through the questions that we have, I'm going to ask people to see if they can even summarise their answers even more so, so that we can try and attempt to get through the rest of the questions, because I've noticed that time is really marching on. I'm going to ask Kate if you've got anything briefly to add to that from a primary perspective, because Fiona did mention there that she's not going to comment on primary. She's obviously got that secondary slant. Anything you want to just very briefly tag on to that question about the interface of instrumental music in the primary school?
Yes, thank you, Pauline. Yes, it's it boils, a lot of it hinges on teacher confidence, doesn't it? And how can we empower teachers to be more confident, to be able to give the basics to the children from age 2, to do singing, games and rhymes, to do body percussion, be able to confidently deliver these activities, and adding in your tune percussion, adding in your body percussion recorder, laying everything as they grow up from age 2 in the school, nursery school, and that is complex. But if it was all, this is what you could do at this level, and progressive resources with areas of creating and composing within them, would hopefully generate confidence in the children to make them open out and want to take up an instrumental. And if instrumental come in at P4 for string projects and wind projects and P5, 6, 7, I think that'd be wonderful. The children have got an experience, but they need to have the basics, don't they? Have the rhythm skills and learning to read music. I'm very passionate about teaching children how to read music with no note names. This is what it looks like, and just being able to show children how the music can be delivered, how they can learn it in a fun and engaging way through progressive resources. Sorry.
No, thanks, Kate. That's great. So it's great hearing you talk about, just getting in young and empowering the teachers and the young people to have the confidence to make and share music from a very early age. including instrumental provision from a very early age. So we're going to move on to the next question, because there has been really good news in Scotland recently, because we have free instrumental tuition, which has helped young people access instrumental tuition on a really large scale. So we're going to have John talk to this question just for a few minutes. So John, I would like you to share with everyone, how did Scottish campaigners achieve this wonderful free instrumental tuition in Scotland? That's the first part of the question, but also £55 million of funding for a new national centre for music. And what might campaigners in England and Wales and Northern Ireland learn from your success? And what impact do you think these changes in music education will have on the talent pipeline and on the workforce? Let's see how fast you can answer that question.
Okay, how did we manage these two things? Well, first of all, the two things are unrelated, but if anybody can learn anything from this, they both are the results of very long campaigns over at least 20 years, in my experience, and very hard, dogged determination by a lot of people who found themselves congenitally predisposed not to take no for an answer. And so more recently, we've got a great bunch of politicians. That's what devolution has brought us closer to politicians, and from all parties in Holyrood who were they were up for it, and getting in all of their manifestos for the election, and then getting in the first 100 days commitments from Nicola Sturgeon. It's good to have a First Minister who used to play the saxophone. And finally, COVID convinced everyone that music education was an essential part of COVID recovery for our children and young people, and for us as well. And then the 55 million for the National Centre is part of a philanthropic gift from Carl Grigger of the Dunard Foundation, who believes that Scotland's capital city should be more like Cardiff, one of the most beautiful built environments in the world. In Edinburgh we've got, but it should also be one of the world's musical hotspots. And so she's also putting money into a new £75 million concert hall designed by David Chipperfield in St Andrew's Square, using the old RBS front of house at Dundas House, which was built in 1774. And that was only passed there on Thursday through Edinburgh Council. This will be the headquarters for the Scottish Chamber Orchestra. And Gillian Moore of London South Bank has been advising Gavin Reid on all the community and education aspects of this build, all of the EDI stuff, which will make it a magnet for young people from all backgrounds and ethnicities. And so this new Carlton Hill National Centre project, housing St Mary's Music School, will similarly have deeply inclusive community programmes. And the whole thing looks set to irrigate Scotland with fresh thinking. Now, place is very important in the modern world of internet. We all need to put our feet down somewhere. And I think this focus on music and music education in Edinburgh, which is actually home to the biggest arts festival in the world, will have a beneficial effect on the pipeline and indeed the whole Scottish music industry.
Thank you. Thanks, John. And I'm sure we'll have questions which we're going to pick up on afterwards. We're going to move to Wales now, so a change of geographical direction, but we've got a very exciting new Welsh curriculum. Seems very similar to the Scottish curriculum from what I've looked into it, but it includes expressive arts, which is also the banner that we sit under in Scotland. So I'm going to pass over to Rhiannon and Rian shortly. So how will the new Welsh GCSE curriculum, which includes expressive arts, strengthen arts education in Wales? Rhiannon, would you like to talk to that one first, please?
Thank you, and it's a really, really important question, and it's at the crux of the expressive arts curriculum. But before I pop into that question. I just wanted to reflect briefly, if I may, in terms of the interaction, in terms of instrumental tuition and classroom pedagogy, because this is at the heart of this new thinking, and it does sound very similar to Scotland's, but in regard to the ability at GCSE level to be able to study a subject-specific music, that will still go ahead. The issues between that then is how the music education, peripatetic instrumental tuition, National Music Service, too many titles I know, but how that then interacts is actually fundamentally built into the curriculum. And that is the development process at the moment, is to how we can better interplay those two interfaces, which have always been extremely separate in the main. You've got your instrumental tuition and your orchestra, and then you've got your classroom pedagogy, and they meet with a peripatetic instrumental tuition lesson if they are lucky. But it's how that interplay and interface works, because we know one of the things that is very difficult across the United Kingdom is that professional development, that challenge, that competence in primary school subject music teaching. So how can that world coalesce with a brand new curriculum to be able to create that hot, that cauldron then of new thinking? I think this is really exciting. There are huge challenges though, as Rhiannon has touched upon, in terms of how that is going to be implemented moving forward and when that will be implemented with COVID. So to go back to your wider question in terms of the curriculum, Pauline, I think absolutely it's going to be a new world. I think one of the challenges that we've got in terms of expressive arts will be training, will be professional development, and it will be how our pioneer schools in Wales are cascading that peer-to-peer cluster learning with other schools effectively. Because one of the big elephants in the room, we've briefly touched upon COVID, is time out for teachers to be able to share their learning with other schools, time out for cover for teachers to be able to do that really important work. And it's getting those ingredients right. And there are challenges there for Wales. But I think the bonus, the ambition there is very real. We have to get that journey correct. And that's what we're working on at the moment. But we're very determined to do that.
Thank you. Rhian, do you have anything quickly that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think there have been some really exciting developments over the last 5 years that have pointed us towards this new curriculum coming in, and towards how we might look at expressive arts, and how we might actually create a collaboration between schools and the arts sector. Arts Council Wales has been running a programme looking at creativity in the classroom over the last 5 years, and that programme has been a great model, a great kind of experimental model to find out how do we use the arts and use artists and use a collaboration between teachers and arts organisations to deliver the curriculum in the classroom. And I think I'm involved in the national plan development sessions, and some of the thinking that's coming through from that work from Arts Council Wales into those sessions, looking at how we can create a collaboration between teachers in the classroom and organisations and musicians in the community to deliver something really holistic for learners. I think that's really exciting. I mean, it has its challenges, of course, but I think that's where the expressive arts and the ambition of the new curriculum to be able to reach beyond schools into the wider community gives us lots to play with, I think, for the future. And I'm really excited to see where that ends up, because there's so much potential.
Yeah, exactly. That's back to the real world learning and contextualizing the music that person wants to learn, that they can see themselves the being in. We also have a new qualification in Scotland in creative thinking, that you were talking about creativity there. So yeah, exciting times. I'm going to just move us on. So how do you feel we could support the workforce? Rhiannon, you talked at the beginning about leaving teachers time to develop these things, but this final question before I open up to lots of questions that we have coming through, but how do we best support the workforce going forward? Because we've got lots of challenges at the moment coming out of this pandemic, which we're not really out of, but what are all the things that we can do to support professional learning? Kate, would you like to say a little bit about that to start with?
Well, I think we all know that online, with the pandemic, the capacity to deliver CLPL online has been massive. We had a big shift on Zoom or Teams to be able to deliver to, and that opens up the potential to reach every teacher. They have got the opportunity to join lots of different conferences online, and maybe there's a hybrid coming in the future where you can go face to face to conference, but it's also being recorded live or recorded so that other people can watch it, which is going to be happening. And I think lots of teachers have been able to deliver during the pandemic, make videos of themselves with teaching lessons, which I think will still go on in the future. I think as a very valuable as a primary music specialist, I had to really gear up quickly when the pandemic came along, and you learn to record videos, you become more confident in, well, hopefully more confident in teaching and being able to put it and share it with your students. Using Sway as a platform, I found it was incredibly good to share your music lessons on Sway. A more recent thing is ThingLink. I think it's fabulous for being able to send out online learning, and these are things I've been using in pandemic, but I'm going to continue using them, because I think as a music specialist, for me to be able to give work or online learning home as well as teaching, I think that's absolutely fantastic, the capacity to do that. And I think that will help children, and the parents are investing time with the children because they're engaging with the lessons that they're sent online as well. So I wonder what other people think about this, the way forward as well, but definitely CLPL online is going to be huge, I think, a huge help.
And I'm not even sure if we all use that acronym. We maybe do. CLPL, Career Long Professional Learning. That's a Scottish acronym. But Fiona, do you have anything just quick?
Add one point, Paul, if I may, briefly on this particular topic. I think one of the important ingredients, and I'm obviously speaking to Wales, but they're transferables, is that we already have experts. We already have peripatetic music instrumental teachers, very strong in the main across Wales, although they have been slowly and now swiftly demising due to the cutbacks in terms of non-statutory services, which we are hoping to reverse, hopefully as soon as possible. But we have these pockets of excellence. And in terms of continuous learning or professional development or whatever you want to call it, you know, that synergy between classroom practitioners and instrumental peripatetic tuition teachers is already there. It's about getting that ingredient and getting that recipe totally mixed in together. And I'm very much hoping, Rhiannon, in terms of the national plan, that will be inbuilt, because why lose those pockets of experts who are already in the room and who can contribute greatly to music specialist practitioners in school. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to switch to Fiona. And I also throw out a slightly controversial nugget in saying that we don't actually have a national plan in Scotland. And that's just another thing we might have time to think about in the questions at the end. But let's move to Fiona first.
Yeah, I think best way forward. We have, I agree with Kate. We have become new, different types of experts. We have gained skills. A lot of our online methodology is new to me, and I'm using it regularly now, and I don't want to lose it, but I also don't want it to become the alternative to what we previously did. I think there's scope for the old ways and the new ways to move into a brighter future. And so using online teaching, actually maybe doing, you know, analytical score reading, using videos and things like that. I think there's scope for all of that, absolutely. But I really do want to see a bigger investment into what happens in the classroom with, you know, just to reassure practitioners at primary level, so that we have kids coming into post-primary who are keen, enthusiastic, but have that lesson time as well, that they are actually going to get just immersed in music, and that they're going to see that they have the musical ability and the capabilities to explore their imagination more than what they currently do. That we have some brilliant practitioners here in Northern Ireland. We have some fantastic fantastic departments, and the creativity and just the sense of musical culture in this wee country is just incredible. But there are parts of us where we really need support, and we need for our senior leadership teams, we need our school managers just to remember that actually we're not just to be wheeled out for spring concerts and carol services, but in actual fact, we are the everyday pulse of the school. And so we need to be seen as being valid as a classroom activity, as well as just that lovely extracurricular fluff that sometimes we are. There's lots of things that need to just move forward. The cracks have appeared because of the pandemic. It's time to deal and maybe to move forward from this.
Thank you. And moving forward to try and take back the positives, whilst acknowledge all these challenges are still there, I'd like you all just to think very quickly, and you're going to get 20 seconds on this. Can you state one thing that's really great in either your new devolved national plan or policies in relation to Key Stage 3 or equivalent delivery in the classroom? Go for it, Rihanna,
yes.
First, 20 seconds.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question. So one thing that will is Key Stage 3
or the equivalent, yeah.
Or the equivalent. I think overall I would generally say in Wales it would be the cultural change that there is at the top, and how that now cascades down into the national curriculum, and how all of our different ingredients in our pot with our new national strategy for music education and that national plan interact, so that all of the players are inputting into the potential of our young people moving forward.
Brilliant, thank you. Rian, what's your take on it?
I think this excitement around the new national plan and the sense of collaboration between teachers and musicians and the music sector, I think that holds a lot of promise.
Thank you. Oh, beautifully timed. Kate, what excites you about National 5, it would be in Scotland, and CFE?
Well, I don't teach in secondary at the moment, but I would really be really encouraging instrumental tuition to be as much started in primary as possible to lead forward into the secondary curriculum. So I would think that would be, if we could enhance that, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. John, what do you think is a really good key thing about the National 5 time in Curriculum for Excellence? A real positive.
I think a real positive is that it's not too prescriptive, and that you don't actually have a national plan, you know. And that's the fact, if I had my way, I'd get rid of most exams and I wouldn't have them, and I'd just make school a really, really creative place. What I've found during the pandemic is that it's turned my whole pedagogy on its head. Like, you know, we've been teaching kids online, beginners, and what we've been doing it through creativity and fun. And once people are having fun, they learn it. They learn the dots so much easier.
Brilliant, thank you. A wee bit over 20 seconds, but it was all great points. Fiona, Key Stage 3, I think it's called for you as well. A really positive thing about your Key Stage 3 policy, because I don't think you do have a national plan.
No, we don't. But what we do have is we're back in our classrooms, we're teaching in our music departments, and after every challenge, there are always opportunities. And as we begin to reimagine what we want to do, I know I'm teaching differently. I know I'm teaching brand new things, and the kids are absolutely loving it. I just want more of it.
Brilliant. Thank you. We've got time very quickly to put in a final question. Do the panel feel that their government and local authority value music education? John?
Very definitely. Before the pandemic, I went on a tour of all the local authorities, but believe you me, going up at the rest and be thankful to Loch Gilphead's a long way. And I haven't ever talked to a single local authority head of education who isn't sold on music, nor to one Scottish politician. They just wish they had more money for it. Yep. So it's our job's to hold them up by the bootstraps and shake all of that money out of the cobwebs in their wallets.
Thank you. I'm conscious that not everybody might reply or think the same, and people listening might not share the same perspective, but that's a really positive place. So I'm going to move on to the next bit and another question in the chat. So again, we'll have to be really brief because we're almost out of time, but what does Rhiannon think is the best way that we as music educators can lobby policymakers for high quality music education, apart from holding them up with the bootstraps?
Firstly, every single one of you, wherever you are in the United Kingdom, you contact your member of parliament, you contact your member of assembly or a member of the Senate, and you arrange to meet them in the myriad of time that you have left available to you after your working day, and you have that communication with them. Because one of the reasons I set up the cross-party group on music, because it's to raise that profile, and we need those conversations. We have to have those discussions, because politicians will spend money on social services, they will spend money in local government, but music and culture is always there in the background. And we have to make politicians fully understand that this is not just about music, it's about COVID recovery, it's about well-being, it's about educational attainment and the potential of all children to have equal access to it. And it is part of who we are as a nation. So just please contact your politicians. And if anybody wants any help in that, I'm more than happy to do that on any cross-party basis.
Fantastic, thanks so much. I'm just going to try and summarise very briefly because we are almost out of time, and it's been an excellent panel to be involved in. And I think just some of the key things that have come out from today, obviously there are still challenges, but the really positive thing is that we are back, we are making music together. There are young people in our classrooms, in our instrumental studios who are back making music. There are exciting things happening in Wales. Watch the space with what happens with their national plan and the new refreshed national plan coming out in England. And we don't have one in Scotland. We're always just a little bit different, and that's okay. It's quite good that we can share all these experiences. We've been talking a lot about the real importance of building confidence, not just for the young people, but in the teachers, particularly in primary school, and how it's so important to empower music provision in primary school, because that just feeds into everything. And in the session earlier on today, where we're talking about early years music making and facilitating music making in the home, and just the fact that we are all musical, and you know, that is just so important, just to think on that phrase which we heard. I can't remember who said that in the session this morning, but it just must happen from such a young age. We were talking about professionalism or professionalisation, and that's career-long professional learning and support, but all the good things which have come out and the technical skills that people have learned, and how we can continue to work on that and to capitalise on that, but not as a substitute, but to support and kind of maintain that, and how we can think about STEAM, not STEM, but that's a really useful positive one. But it's very important that young people can see themselves modelled in school, so it's not school music and their music. So I think of the phrase, whose music, whose agenda, and that we can be thinking about young people's music. And we really are almost out of time now, so I'm just going to say thank you very much. So if we think about the gendered, social and cultural values, and try and encompass all of this in our inclusive music making. But thank you very much to our panellists, to John, to Fiona, to Rhiannon, to Kate and to Rian. Thanks to the ISM for hosting this session. Lots of stuff to think about. We have just scratched the surface because it's been really difficult in trying to encapsulate this 4 nations, but thank you to everybody for joining. Hopefully this has been lots of food for thought, and please stay on to watch the next performance from Glasgow Create. And thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.